So thanks for the invitation. Today I'm going to talk about the playful effect of data interventions. As you may know, there is a huge gap between citizens, people, and data. I consider that are two main reasons for that. The first one, at least here in Colombia, I'm Colombian, I live in Colombia, is the accessibility to the data. For example, here the DANE, that is the institution that collects and shares public data, says that the data is open and all the people can access to that information, but that is not true. Basically, because just only the half of the population in Colombia has access to internet. So if you build experiences and communication pieces to communicate data only on the digital side, half of the population would not have access to that information. So this is the first explanation of this huge gap. And the second one is literacy. Usually people don't understand the data because they don't know how to read data, and they consider that data are I don't know, boring, sometimes complex, sometimes complicated. And there are the two main reasons of that gap. So let me introduce myself. My name is Jose Duarte. I'm a designer. I have a master's degree in communication. And for the past 12 years, I've been working with huge private companies such as Google, for example, or UNICEF, help them to connect their audiences with data, creating different and creative experiences. But I also work a lot with public institutions, public organizations, help them to share relevant data so people can make better decisions with that data. This is my Instagram account. This is my Twitter account. This is also my email. So if you want to contact me later, it will be nice. So the things I do, usually it's about exploring the relationship between people and data through a playful and memorable approach that usually, but not exclusively, takes place in public space. And at the end, the purpose of that interventions and playful interventions with data in public space are to trigger relevant, important conversations with the citizens. So I have talked about abortion, for example. I have talked about education, corruption, transportation, and today I'm going to show you a couple of examples. And I want to show you the examples, maybe, I want to show you those examples and show you the process and the evolution of my work in the past 12 years, talking about the journey from this, that was the very first project that I did with analog data visualization, that was the handmade visualization toolkit, and the very last project that I did the past year, that is like the evolution of the first kit. And I hope that showing you the journey, you can learn the same things that I learned in the past 10 or 12 years. So the first kit was all about analog data representation, was an exploration on how can we represent data in a different way, not just the digital two-dimensional way, but the analog and three-dimensional and physical way. So it was an aesthetic approximation of data. It was a very successful project. It was published in many books. It was 2009. Remember that it was before Mona Chalabi. It was before Giorgia Lupi. It was even before the presentations that Hans Rosling did in TED with analog representation. So it was a very relevant project in that moment, because the statement was anybody can do a good visualization, it's not necessary that you were a programmer or a developer, and you can also enjoy the process of the representation of that information. So we did a lot of versions of that kit. These are some of those versions. And then we travel around the world sharing the experiences. And today we have done almost 100 workshops around the world in almost 50 cities around the world, sharing the experience of analog data representation. These are some of the first analog representation that we did with the materials that contains the box of the kit. But at the end of that first part, that was the first 2 or 3 years, we understood that it wasn't enough because of the first problem that I told you before, that is people can access to the information. And here we are putting the information in outside, but then we are putting the data digitally and sharing the data digitally. So what the next step for us was to take the data and really take advantage of the public space, because now we consider the public spaces as the real democratic space to share data. So we start to do some interventions around the city, showing relevant data to citizens. Sometimes data like this, that is, this is a cultural consumption. Here we work with an institution in the government to share the results of the report of cultural consumption. And we intervene many series around the city, almost 200 series around the city, doing pie charts. And for the first time, you didn't have to go to search the information in the internet, and but you can find the information in the streets. So these are some examples. This is I really like this project. It's a projector that projects data about suicide in Colombia. Colombia is the country in Latin America with the highest rate of suicides. So it's a simple projector that has a sensor, and when in the day is getting darker, it starts to project data about suicides. This is a tape. It's the same principle. It's represent data using the public space to take that information to the people. But as you can see here, it's one-way communication. In that moment was still one-way communication. This is information about immigration. This is one of the projects that I did the last year. It's a really nice project. I really like it. We call it the data box. It's a box that contains data about abortion. So we move the box around the city with facts about abortion, so people could listen that information. It was a very interesting project because it amplifies what we think that data visualization should be. Data visualization is about, it's just about or only about visuals, or you can listen information and it's also a visualization, or you can touch information, or you can taste information. So it's like that approach. And this is one of the last projects we did. It's about the conflict in Colombia. These are bar charts that contains the data of the victims, 9 million victims of the conflict for the past 30 years in Colombia. But as I told you, it's only one way, the representation. So the next step was, what about if we can create participatory experiences in public space to invite people to build together the information, the visualization. So we start to do this kind of intervention using dot botting, asking people about their own neighborhoods. We start to explore what the components and the configuration of the information. Usually this kind of systems has one system of question, one of answering, and one of participation. And when you use and combine these three elements, you can do this kind of devices, data participatory devices, where you can ask, in this example, for example, that it's a system that we put in the neighborhoods. Is this neighborhood safe, or is it cheap to live here? These are the kind of question we ask to people here. Or sometimes we do this kind of devices that put in events to ask people about the topic, the main topic of the event. Here it's a device that asks about innovation. Or in this one that we did with a public institution here, where we ask citizens about safety practices in their neighbors. So we have many examples of that approach. And for the past, I think 8 years, we have done this, learning a lot on this kind of participatory devices. But then we start to understand that when people go to participate with a dot or with a stone or with a ball in that kind of systems and collect information from them, and at the same time we show them representations of information, it was the opportunity to trigger a meaningful conversation for them. So we start to, and I think this meme resumes a very good what I'm trying to say here. We start to create, to approach complex information to people through easy conversations that we trigger with data representation or data collective participatory devices. So these are some examples of that. The device is in the back, asking about the difference. It's a simple question. Would you prefer to share a desert island with a person that thinks exactly like you, or with a person that thinks different? So that was the excuse to trigger the conversation about the difference. But at the same time, we were collecting information for the participants. So we have done lots of these kind of systems. They are easy to carry, to take from one place to another, because it's part of the thing that are important here, that is iterate as many times as we can this kind of interventions. This is another project we did with Easy Database and with Tel. And this is another one, a device that we use in the social mobilization here in Colombia 2 years ago, asking people about their motivations to go to the streets and protest. At the end of this experience, we usually do a report with the results. This is another intervention, asking people about if they are pessimists or optimists about their future, and the people vote using a glass of water. All of these experiences, this was another one that we did with the public system of libraries here in Bogota. It's a project that we did with Tel also. This is we call it the data mobile. It was a little car that traveled around the city, triggering a conversation about, starting a conversation about public policy, about good labeling in products. So we have lots of examples of that. And this is the last one that I did a couple of weeks ago. This is me dressed like a person that sells ice creams. And the question here was, are you going to vote? Because the election was one or 2 weeks ago. And depending on your answer, we give to the people one ice cream of one color, or white or red, depending on your answer. And this was an installation about asking the motivations of people about their intention of voting. And to all that process and all the things we learned in that three steps, analog representation, using the public space as a really democratic space to share information and build a two-way communication experience, and then understand that kind of devices in public space that share data and ask data from us as a conversational tools. All of that knowledge finally take place in this project, and I think this is somehow the culmination of that project. That is the key of Let's Play with Data. So let me, in the last 5 minutes, tell you something about this project. This is the kit. It's bigger than the first one, and the project was an invitation from Ideas for Change, that is an organization in Barcelona that was working with We Count, a project that I'm going to tell you about the project in a minute, and Telram and Mobile 21. All the organization, all of us were working in this project. So what they had there, these are the Telram devices that are digital devices that you put in your window and collect information of the transit in front of your house. So you can see how many cars are transiting in that street, how many buses, how many pedestrians, how many bicycles, and it has additional sensors that show you, for example, the direction of the transportation systems, or the pollution, or if they are noisy or not. So they had lots of information, and they collect that information and they put it in their website. But the problem here was that it was a project that involves the neighbors, but also the neighbors didn't understand the information they were collecting and how can they use that information. So the challenge was, how can we create a playful experience with that information so they can understand that information and triggering conversation in their neighborhoods about the information they were collecting. So we start to design that kit. That it was a kit that we're going to be used in many cities, but we started in Barcelona, but then it was used in Madrid, then Leuven and Brussels in Belgium. And it was a kit that allowed you to do two things. The first one was to represent information, the conclusions of the information that you were collecting. And the second thing was to collect information, trigger conversations in public space to collect information from your neighbors. So we use these pieces of wood to build these simple graphics. These are the real kits. This is the real configuration that you can do with that kit. And these are the neighbors. This is in Leuven in Belgium. This is the first part of the project. We are talking with them, help them to understand the data they were collecting through the digital device. And we are building an analog experience here to try to take advantage of that data. So the conversation here was what kind of data we will like to share with our neighbor, or what kind of questions we would like to ask to our neighbor. So that was the first part of the project. Then we went outside and start the conversation with the neighborhoods. So it was a very interesting question, because it experience puts the people that use that device in their window to go outside and talk about that information with their own neighborhoods in the neighbor. And these are some examples of that intervention. This is in Barcelona, people asking about how do they go to work. These are some interventions in Madrid. And at the end of that experience that usually took place in 1 or 2 days, we went again to that space to share what we learned in that space, in the public space. So we shared that experience, and that was the closing of the experience in each of those cities. So let me show you this. It's a small video, a short video that show a little more about that experience.
Ik doe mee met Telraam. Ik verzamel gegevens over de mobiliteit in onze straat. Die gegevens die zijn heel interessant, maar het zou leuk zijn als we die ook kunnen delen met medebewoners, met andere mensen in de stad. En daarom denken we na over hoe we dat visueel kunnen krijgen. Als we ze visueel kunnen voorstellen, zijn ze makkelijker te begrijpen voor iedereen en kunnen we erover in gesprek gaan. Bij Mobiel 21 willen we die waardevolle telraamdata inzetten om onze mobiliteit gezonder en duurzamer te maken. We helpen om die data op een eenvoudige manier uit te leggen en te tonen aan andere mensen. Zo brengen we het gesprek op gang over leefbare straten. En voor ons begint die discussie liefst meteen al op straat zelf. Data doen praten, daar gaat het om. Met de low-tech visualisatiekit van Easy Datavis gebruiken we de publieke ruimte als forum. Met die interactieve kit brengen we de discussie op gang en moedigen mensen aan om zelf na te denken over oplossingen voor gezonde straten op mensenmaat.
Als je dit zo ziet, dan denk je, als de meerderheid vindt dat er wel bussen moeten zijn, dan kan ik het ook beter accepteren dat ze er zijn. Dus dat mensen het gevoel hebben dat ze een mening kunnen geven, is fijn. Gewoon een leuke, speelse manier.
Ja, dat is inderdaad wel een snelle manier om gewoon snel een antwoord te krijgen van de mensen die hier rondlopen. Ik denk dat ik niet weet of dat daarmee ook alle personen bereikt. Ik denk dat je op deze plaats een bepaald soort mening zult hebben. Maar
So let me stop here because I know that we don't have time, but I can share with you the link so you can see the complete video. And that's it. So I hope you have enjoyed the examples, the journey, and maybe you get inspired about to approach from a different way to data visualization. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you have any question. If you want to contact me, you can use, as I told you, my Instagram account or my Gmail account. That it's the same, Jose Duarte Q.